she was a strict disciplinarian. But when I went to parent-teacher conference, she told me that Todd was every bit as bright as Lee. He just was not interested.
Oh, well.
And that was true. Now, in the 6th grade, he did pretty well because he liked his teacher very much.
Oh, makes a big
So
difference.
he wanted to please her.
Oh,
But he did not excel in school.
mm-hmm.
And when he wanted to go into the School of Architecture, Mark at that time was the school counselor, or he had his degree in counseling.
Yeah.
And he told Todd that truck drivers got more money than he did as a school teacher, that you didn't have to go to college. And Todd said, but I want to be an architect. And then Todd went off to school and got on the dean's list.
Wow.
And Mark says, some counselor I am. It was just a matter of what your interest is.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's a neat story.
And when the boys were in junior high, Lee said, I'm going to do something where I make some money.
Ah.
And Todd said, good, I'll come live with you because I'm going to be a garbage man.
Oh.
And not too long ago, Todd told me, I think I'd like to be a garbage man.
A little less stress, maybe.
Yeah, what he's doing now is pretty stressful.
Sure. Both Lee and Todd have pretty stressful jobs. Oh. Well, Mama, let's see what we haven't really talked much about Mary yet. What was it like to have Mary come into your life?
Mary has always just been, she wanted to be in on everything. With Mary, I really didn't have a schedule.
Uh-huh.
We just sort of fit her in. And when she was, by the time she was 18 months old,
Mm-hmm.
we had a little record player, which was electric, and you started it by moving a lever. And Mary learned that you put the record on, and she put the needle on the record and moved the lever.
Oh.
So she would entertain herself for a long period of time playing records. But Mary just fit in.
Pretty easygoing.
Yes. However, when she was, I think about 8 months old, she began not to swallow properly.
Uh-oh.
She couldn't. She would regurgitate things. And I told the doctor, and he thought I was one of those mothers. And so one day we had Mary out at the golf course. By this time Mary was quite pale.
Mm.
And
you mean from lack of
yes,
food?
from really not being able to be well nourished.
Wow.
And,
how long a span, when she first started it at 8 months, how long a span was it till you figured out
not a long, long time.
Like matter of weeks, Mama? Or?
Yes, I'd say so.
Okay.
And we had her out at the golf course, and we were in the caddy shack, and so was the doctor.
Oh,
and,
just by coincidence?
And I had a soda of some sort, and he said, well, let me see.
Oh.
And he said, give her a swallow of the soda. So I put it up to her lips, and she took a mouthful and just spit it out.
Oh.
So then he, with his nice clean hands, put her into his lap and looked into her mouth to see what the problem was, and told me to bring her over to the hospital. And they decided she had an enlarged thymus. I think they probably did that by x-ray. And then they did a treatment of x-ray on the thymus. And yeah, it was like night and day. She could swallow them.
Wow.
But they gave her shots of an iron substance, which the nurse told me they burned like crazy. And Mary they'd give her the shot and they'd feel so bad, and Mary would just smile at them. And they said, she just makes you feel more and more guilty.
She had a good tolerance for pain, I guess.
Well, she might cry real hard right at the moment, and then
and then
smile.
Oh, that doesn't surprise me. That Mary would smile. Did they say what causes the enlarged thymus?
No, they did not.
Did not
But
know.
when we showed signs of this,
what age was he, Mama?
about the same.
Same age?
And then Todd showed signs about the same age.
Oh, really?
And so they were all three treated.
Is that right? But neither Todd nor Lee were as bad as Mary?
Well, as soon as I complained, the doctor
I see.
then x-rayed to see if they had the problem.
And they each did have the same thing. Oh, it's interesting. Huh. Well, and then they both improved after the
Yes,
radiation.
they had no more trouble then.
Oh, that's amazing. Mama, I know, let's see, are there any more stories that come to mind at the moment about Mary that you... Now, she had a heifer or a cow in 4-H, or...
Yes, when she was in high school, she wanted to be in 4-H and get I think a steer. And she did, which they kept it down at the
the fairgrounds?
no, it was he kept horses and
a corral?
a corral down at the edge of town, and yeah, they called it Mounces. And that particular winter, we had a heavy snow, and that steer had to be fed morning and evening.
Oh.
And walked. They walked him around. So the three of them would go down and feed that. that steer. And while they had it, John Wayne came to his ranch up in Eager and invited the 4-H club up there. So the kids got to meet John Wayne.
Oh, that's exciting.
Which was nice.
So it was a matter of just the group of them were driven up there and
Well,
they met?
we went up too.
Oh, you and
Laurie
Daddy?
and I took them up. But yes, the whole group went up.
So you met him too?
Yes,
and
but
Daddy?
he was much more interested
In the youngsters?
in the kids, yeah.
Sure.
And
Because he had a ranch himself there, is that right?
yes, yes,
Is that in the, in the White Mountains, I guess?
in the White Mountains, near Greer. It's between Springerville and Greer. And it's called, it was close to what they call Eager. And now they went down in the valley in the winter time. And I forget where that ranch was.
That's okay.
But,
At any rate, so Mary had to sell her steer at some point?
well, they have an auction, and the local businessmen pretty much bid on the steers, and the land, and the pigs, and whatever, you know, the kids raised, and yeah, and the idea was that they borrowed money to buy him, and then they had to pay it back, and they had to pay for the feed, and and I have blamed the man who was the sponsor of 4-H. His name is Bob Boyce, and his daughter, also a Mary, was in Mary's class in school, and she also had a steer. And her younger brother, Grant, also had a steer. So they were all in it together. But I have told Bob Boyce that I blame him for Mary's entrepreneur ideas, where you borrow and get things going.
And then pay back. Let's see, where should we go from here? Yeah, Mary's applied a lot of that to her car wash business.
Yes.
Mama, we haven't really said a whole lot about Mark and Linda, other than just at the very beginning. What was Linda like as a young girl, and are there any special stories that come to mind?
Well, Linda was always very independent. Me do it. And like when to go across the street, she didn't want me to hold her hand. However, she would hold my hand to get me across the street. But
how old would she have been at that point?
3.
Oh my.
I mean, she just came that way.
Prepackaged.
Yes. And with Linda, she was very easy to teach that there were things you didn't touch. And like Anna, she was very careful about walking. She walked touching something, until she was about 13 months old.
Mhm.
Then she took off and never fell down.
Wow.
And she was a very easy child
To manage.
to manage, but she did have a temper if she was cross. And like I say, we had this crib that was a kiddie coop, and it screamed, and I don't know how old she was, but she would have been walking. She had shoes on, and she began to have a little temper tantrum, and I put her into the kiddie coop to cool down, and she kicked a hole in the kiddie coop.
Oh, that must have hurt her feet.
Well, she had her shoe on.
Oh.
She couldn't have done it with her foot.
Oh, good.
Linda had small feet, still does, but she was small. Now Mark, he had, and still does, had small feet, but he was a chunky little boy. So I don't know how old he was when he began to try to take steps, and he would put one foot forward, pull the other foot up to it, and fall down.
Ah.
And he was a long time learning to really balance himself so he could walk.
And so how old was he when he really could walk?
Oh, I think about 15 months. But he did a lot of bouncing around on the floor before he... and Linda taught Mark not to touch things. Now, Mark
That's interesting.
wanted to please you, and all you had to say to him was, Mark, and you had him in tears.
Oh, very sensitive.
He didn't want to do anything wrong.
Oh.
But I used to, Linda was a very poor eater, and we'd have the 2 high chairs, and Mark would make Linda laugh. He would clown anything to please her, and sometimes I got a little irritated with the... Now he ate.
He ate well?
He ate well. Linda never did eat well. When Mark was expected, and the doctor said, "Do you want a girl or a boy?" I said, "I don't care, just make it eat." And he did.
Oh, that's good. Wow. So are there any other stories you think about with Mark, any incidents in school or otherwise that you think of, Mama?
Oh, Mark was small, and he went to kindergarten early. His birthday was in December, so he was one of the younger kids in his class. And the kids could take the ball and everything away from him. And there was a boy in his kindergarten class named Teddy Schwartz. And Teddy would not let the kids take the stuff from Mark. Mark thought Teddy Schwartz was something special.
Oh. Now Mark worked in a store.
I will tell you about when he came home from first grade.
Okay.
And he came home and he was crying, and I said, "What's your problem?" And he says, I spell my name wrong. And I said, you spell your name wrong? Yes, I'm supposed to make it a C, not a K. My name is Marcus. And so his best friend's father's name was John, and we called him Jack. And I said, now, if Craig's daddy, his name is John, and we call him Jack, if we can call Craig's daddy Jack, you can be Mark with a K. It's your name, you can spell it any way you like. And
so which did he choose at that time?
So
he stayed with the K?
Yes, it wasn't until in his years as a counselor at Apollo, there was a teacher came by the name of Mark.
Oh, okay.
And they began to get the mail mixed up in the teacher's boxes. So he said, time I spell my name right.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I thought it was partly because of we have a Mark too, and
no, it was because
it was that Apollo.
It was the thing at Apollo.
Oh.
And
well, that's Mama. I was going to ask you, how about Lee? I know he was sensitive when he was really young because of the encephalitis, but otherwise, what was he like to raise?
Well, Lee was always a perfectionist, and I was trying to think when he started to carry the paper. I think he was maybe in junior high, but I'm not sure. And he carried the evening paper first.
I see.
And I think you can ask him. He would remember that.
Sure.
But Mark and Mark Naylor and Lee. I think Mark Naylor would do it. But then Todd, and they began to ride their bicycles out to Copper Hill. And got into, I did not know until they got grown how lucky I was to have them go through that.
Yeah. Oh.
Like I say, increases your faith in God, that He watches over your children.
You're thinking of all the mine shafts that
the
in
mine
Copper
shafts and that cliff that
yeah.
had the hieroglyphics the fossils in it.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that was pretty big drop off.
Yeah. And
wow. They had good lives though, Mama. You and Daddy gave them a really good life.
well, and when they were in college, Lee and Todd, we went up to Seneca, and there is a fall in the spring when the water,
oh, it sounds pretty.
a lovely fall.
Oh.
And I don't know whether Lee had borrowed Linda's camera, but I think that was the way it was. And he was leaning over to take a picture of the fall, and he lost the camera case down, which was a long drop down. And they didn't tell me at that time that they were going to take a walk, the two of them. Well, it began to get dark, and no Todd and Lee. And we looked where, at the fall again, and I thought one of them's fallen and the other one's trying to, I knew something awful had happened.
Oh.
It happened to be a full moon, but we finally decided when it got dark that Lowry would go into town and get help. And I would stay there and we'd build a campfire so the kids could see if they did come back. And Lowry was just driving off when here came Todd, and I told him, your dad's gone to town. And Todd ran after Lowry and did catch him before he got to the road.
Good.
So that but the kids said, well, they were fine, but they had gone down to get that, and they got it.
Oh, they got it, but
They
it took
got
all
it.
that time.
But it took a long time
Oh,
for them to
meanwhile,
get in and out of there.
meanwhile you were on pins and needles.
Well, I knew something awful had happened to them. I mean, when you,
That's the sense you had.
well, we went and looked, and
You couldn't see anything.
Lowry was usually, like when Mary wouldn't show up, he would say, she's always late. Something's come up.
But even he was worried this time.
That time he decided we needed help because it would be cold during the night up
yeah.
there. And because it was early spring, that fall doesn't flow unless there's water. I think probably in recent years it hasn't at all. But
Mama, going again back in time, that on one of the stories you thought of telling might be one time when Todd and Lee were little, how they were both in diapers still, but they disappeared from in front of your house.
Linda and Mark were really very good about taking care of the three little ones. So when I was working in the house, I didn't worry much. But when I went out to check, there were no Lee and Todd. And I said, where are Lee and Todd? And the kid said, well, they were right here.
Oh,
And
no.
so Linda and Mark, and I'm sure that Mary was, one of us had her.
And again, the boys were how old? About?
Well, I would say that Todd was probably a little over, he walked when he was about 10 months old.
Oh, he did?
So I'd say he was between that and a year, and Lee just a year older.
Oh.
And they were both still in diapers, and all they had on was a diaper.
Oh.
And I ran down the street, and around the corner, there they were sitting on the curb, watching a man change a tire.
Oh, funny. Oh. Getting a lesson in changing a tire. Mama, one other thing we thought of having you tell about was your family Christmases, how you would go as a family to look for a tree.
Yes.
Could you please tell some about that?
Well, we were very fortunate to be able